Over the most recent winter break, 5 of my friends and I decided to take a vacation in New Zealand. Our friend Celia has been living there for over a year, and we decided to visit her and take a road trip around the island for about 12 days. The flight to get to New Zealand was a very long 26-hour travel day, which sounds exhausting, but all of us were so excited to go to New Zealand to escape our winter that it did not affect us too much. Once we landed in Wellington, the southernmost city on the North Island, Celia picked us up in the van that we had rented. Once we drove out of the airport, I realized how different everything was. We were driving on the wrong side of the road, it was 70 degrees and sunny, and we were living in the mountains above the beach. New Zealand had already been what we had hoped it would be. As soon as I saw the beach, I told Celia to pull over and landed, and I sprinted out of the van and jumped straight into the cold New Zealand Ocean. After our long flight, it was very refreshing, and even though I did not have a towel to dry off with, driving to our Airbnb while dripping wet was nothing to be worried about when I was in paradise. Our first 2 nights in New Zealand were perfect. We stayed in an Airbnb in Wellington at the top of a mountain, and we explored the city with the limited time that we had. We met a lot of very nice people, and they all told us that if we thought that the North Island was beautiful, then the South Island was going to blow us away. So, we decided to make our way to the South Island. We woke up early after the second night in Wellington, got breakfast, and made our way to the ferry with our van. The van was surprisingly comfortable. It was a 10-seater with 7 people, and 3 of the seats were occupied by our luggage, but the floor spot became the most loved spot in the van. Once we arrived in Picton off the ferry, we got lunch in the town and swam at the inlet where the ferry dropped us off. We hung out with the nice older people that we met on the ferry, but then it was time for us to start driving to Christchurch for our first campsite. It was a long 5-hour drive to Christchurch, and after the ferry, everybody was in great spirits. However, once the drive started, things in the group went south. Once Landon started driving on the windy back roads to Christchurch, he and Chloe both got carsick. Landon was driving a little too fast on the winding roads and made him and Chloe get sick. Then, Celia and Lucas started to feel sick about 30 minutes later, and they started to come down with what seemed like a stomach bug. They started to burn up and got really tired, so the rest of the drive was up to Zane, Ellie, and I, but only I had reception. After another hour of driving to our destination on roads that we had never driven on, we arrived around midnight. We showed up to the campsite that we had looked up, but it was nowhere to be found. We then found out that the campsite that one of us found was actually just a parking lot, and there was no way that 7 of us were going to sleep in that van, especially when 4 of us were sick. I took it upon myself to find where we were staying that night, but the city was over an hour away from the campsite that we had tried to find, and we had little to no service. I decided to go into the only store that had lights on, which was a bar, to ask for help. I walked into the bar by myself, and one large group of people sat in there. I walked in, told them our situation, and they found it funny that some American tourists were stuck in their hometown. Despite this, one man offered us to stay on his land for the night outside of his farm. This would have been great, but the man was very drunk and was slurring his words, so I did not necessarily trust him all too much. I walked back to the van, assessed the situation with my friends that weren't sick or throwing up, and we decided to keep going as soon as everyone could. So, there we were, back on the road at midnight with no real destination or good service. I started calling every hotel in Christchurch to see what was open and who could fit 7 people in a room. After calling 15 hotels by myself, because Zane was driving and everybody else was asleep, I finally found a hotel that would take us all in. I guided Zane to our destination and went into the hotel to check us in. Again, the front desk person thought it was funny that 7 American tourists were stuck in their hometown. Once I checked us in, it was almost 2 a.m. and everyone was still asleep. I started moving everyone's bags into the rooms with 2 beds and started opening sleeping bags for the rest of us. The room was not very comfortable, as 4 of us had to sleep on the ground of this very small hotel room, but no one seemed to mind. I moved us all in, set up sleeping situations, and set an early alarm for checkout in the next morning. When we woke up the next morning, I instantly noticed that everyone felt better, which was a huge relief. I ordered everyone around to get out by 11, and I packed the van and got us out the door right on time after calling my mom to tell her the story of last night. We left the hotel and got breakfast in the city before driving carefully to our next destination. Luckily, from there on out, nobody else got sick for the rest of the trip, and we all had so much fun. That one night was stressful because all my friends were sick in a country very far from home, and we did not have a place to stay, but we made it happen for us to enjoy the rest of our trip. Even with troubles on vacation, a good group of friends around me allowed me to have the best week of my life.